On this episode of Kale Your Idols, we bring you a special report. A book report, that is. We plan on doing several of these episodes on different books that have been written about the new Hollywood era over the course of the show. The story of 70s cinema has many authors by now, and no two versions of the tale are alike. But few have caused a greater stir than Peter Biskind's Easy Rider's Raging Bulls, How the Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll Generation Saved Hollywood. Upon its publication in 1998, the book became a huge bestseller and forever crystallized the way the period would be spoken of in popular culture. Awesome in scope, but never fawning, Biskind conducted hundreds of hours of interviews with its subjects, and the book wound up spilling some very salacious, if not always verifiable, tea on the wild antics of the Movie Brats and their cohort, which caused almost everyone involved to disavow it as a gossipy hit piece of epic proportions. We're going to take this opportunity to talk about the era on the whole a bit more than we usually do. We'll check in on how reading this book and doing the podcast has affected the way we look at the people who made these movies, and how they were affected by things like cocaine.
Welcome to Kale Your Idols, a new Hollywood podcast with your hosts,
Sam Ludwig
and Elena Gibson. This is a podcast about film. Primarily, we discuss movies, directors, actors, and writers known for their work during the new Hollywood era of studio filmmaking that began in 1967 with Bonnie and Clyde and The Graduate, and pretty much ended in the early 80s with One from the Heart and Heaven's Gate. In this episode, we are discussing Peter Biskind's salacious and controversial book, Easy Rider's Raging Bulls, which some consider to be one of the definitive texts on New Hollywood.
Okay, so where to start? I mean, this is a totally different kind of episode for us that we've done. We've never had anything like this. Is this a stupid idea?
I don't know. I like reading.
You like to read?
I think it's good to mix things up a little bit. I think that some of our listeners should read a little bit more as well.
That's true.
Pick up a book every now and then, why don't you?
Yeah, all right. We're going to turn this into a soapbox because there is nothing that Easy Rider's Raging Bulls is not, if not moralizing and attempting to shake its finger at something, I guess. Do you feel that that's true?
Interesting. It definitely is presenting a lot of bad behavior, but I get the sense that Biskind thinks all of that is fun. I don't know how moralizing it really is. Like, for example, I feel like every time he encountered a person or figure who he couldn't dig up anything juicy about, he was a little disappointed. He calls Peter Bogdanovich and Polly Platt boringly straight. They didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't do drugs. So although he's definitely presenting a lot of bad behavior as bad behavior, to me, he doesn't come off as that condemning of it. He's certainly not saying it's good behavior, but I think he kind of thinks it's fun.
Well, he's obviously of two minds, which I think is one of the things that sort of rubs some people the wrong way about this book, because it's clearly trying to capitalize on telling tales out of school, and it's coming at it from the 90s, which is a little bit less permissive of an era than the 60s and 70s, and so it's kind of looking back with a certain kind of fondness about the freedoms that people were taking advantage of AIDS and stuff like that. But I don't know, I also do think, don't you think that, one of the things I think is so strange about the book is it ends on this really, these guys fucked it up for themselves note. I mean, it ends, on We Blew It, is the last chapter. And I think that a lot of his thesis is these men were not auteurs. But I think he also thinks that the drugs and the sex and the being crazy and shit really got in the way. And to me, the picture that I was left with, it's been a little bit longer since I've read the book than you have, but was very much like these guys were basically crazy idiots who convinced themselves and the world and the studio heads that they were geniuses, but they were just drug addicts. And, right? I mean, don't you think that is... Am I onto something there, or am I just...
I actually thought he did a good job summing up the end of New Hollywood. because I think that he gave a lot of different explanations for why it failed. So he came at it from a lot of different ways. And I think his thesis, like one of his thesis about them going a little crazy, was all about how they achieved success at too young of an age, and that was what set them apart from other directors, is because they achieved success so young, it messed with their heads. And he had this quote from Mardik Martin, who was really close with Scorsese, who said, "The auteur theory killed all these people. 1 or 2 films, the magazines told them they were geniuses, that they could do anything. They went completely bananas. They thought they were God." So I didn't get the sense that he thought they were inherently crazy, but just that the early success went to their heads too quickly.
Yeah.
And that the whole 60s and 70s culture of doing a lot of drugs obviously caused a lot of problems, and drug addiction was one of the big downfalls.
Yeah, but I feel like he looks at a lot of, like, the people who were primarily, dominant. Like, their big period was the 70s. You know, your sort of Friedkins, Hal Ashby's, maybe you could say De Palma or whatever. Because remember, this book came out in 1998. So he's also got this different... He's also missing, like, the last 25 years of, like, Scorsese.
Right.
And stuff. And which I think actually would paint a bit of a different picture of Scorsese. Like, even though I do think most of his best work was already done by the time this book came out, the fact that he's had so many late-era masterpieces and that he's gotten to work on such a big scale, I think really has changed the picture that I think Scorsese is going to go down in history with.
Absolutely. I've seen some interviews with him after the fact where he talks about how Scorsese and Spielberg really stood the test of time in terms of their popularity, and that wasn't really something that was captured in Easy Rider's Raging Bulls.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's good. That's good of him. So where do you want to start with this, though? Like, I mean, do you want to give me like a broad, like, what did you think of this book?
So reading it reads, it's like an expose. So I thought it was a fun read. I thought it was juicy, and the prose was good, relatively decent. I wrote this one quote down that I liked. At its most ambitious, the New Hollywood was a movement intended to cut film free of its evil twin, commerce, enabling it to fly high through the thin air of art. So, it's not like masterpiece writing or anything, but I do think that the prose is good. I thought at times it's a little hard to follow all the different threads because it jumps around. It's chronological in a sense where it tackles things in chunks, but then it'll like go through that whole time period it's focusing on in the chapter for one person and then go back in time and talk about the other person through that same chunk of time. And so the jumping around was a little hard to follow, especially when he's talking about the producers, because that's one of the things that this book is doing, is focusing not just on the filmmakers in terms of the directors and the actors, but also the producers as well. And because the producers, I'm not as familiar with their names, each time he would discuss them, I forgot like what had already been associated with them.
Yeah, and then it's like a lot of the stuff with the producers is kind of the same stuff that's being described with the writers and directors and actors, which is like they were cheating on their girlfriend, or like they, decided to start doing a lot of drugs in 1968 and moved into a Malibu beach. You know what I mean? It's just like everybody's behavior is exactly the same.
Yeah.
and it's just kind of like, it's the story of people who are just getting rich and becoming popular and partying a lot. And the subtitle says it all: how the sex, drugs, and rock and roll generation saved Hollywood. He's not talking about like the anti-war generation or like the political you know what I mean? Like this is about like party animals.
Yeah.
Kind of come to town.
Every person, he tries to dig up like what was their sex lives like, who did they cheat on, and what kind of crazy drugs did they do. And I want to like take a second at some point in this episode to just talk about some of our favorite like juiciest stuff.
Of course. That's what he wants.
That's what he wants, yeah. And I guess that's what I want to some extent. Like, it was fun to read, and it definitely gave me a much clearer, I don't know if clearer is the right word. It gave me a strong picture of some of the people involved in the New Hollywood era. who before I only had like a vague sense of who they were. And that's for better or for worse, because we will discuss later like how accurate were these pictures of these people that he painted. But what did you think reading the book? You read it first.
Yeah, and I've read it a couple times now. Not to be a jerk, but I don't think it's especially great prose. Like, it really does read as very pulpy in a way that, like, we're going to talk about this book eventually, but, like, just read a Mark Harris book, read Pictures at a Revolution. Like, that is a absolutely beautifully written piece of work. And this book is, like, he's got interesting things to talk about, right? Like, he's not, he's not really trying to dress up. I feel like there's certainly nothing in the poetic that he's really looking at with these people. It's all demystification, right? Like, I think he's coming at this from the perspective of, like, you need to get how human and how misguided a lot of these people were.
Yeah, he said that part of his motivation to write this book was that he was tired of being so reverent about the filmmakers while writing about them in magazines. So he wanted to be able to just write about all the crazy shit they were doing.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, to me, it reads in a way that's a little school marmish, and it's hard for me to, but it's also just funny. Like, I've made this comment before, but it's like, I mean, the man spends pages and pages and pages detailing, some affair that Coppola had with, like, a costumer or whatever. Right. On the set of Apocalypse Now. What does he say about Roman Polanski's rape charge? Literally one line that's just, like, Roman Polanski. It's, like, the end of the Polanski story. He just casually says, like, do you have it? Do you have the quote?
He said, like, while working on the Chinatown script with Polanski, he kept getting distracted because Polanski kept taking topless photos of teeny boppers in braces, which I found very unsettling. But you're right, that whole section was really short. Do you remember?
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, the very end. Like, all he says is, he's sort of going through, Rafelson did this. This is what happened to Ashby. Polanski, he, exiled to Europe on rape charges. Next person. Like, it's just, that's all he says about it. Meanwhile, he has just detailed, endless dinner time awkwardness with Amy Irving and Steven Spielberg. Just, like, these things that's just, like, you really find, like, this kind of domestic drama more worthy of scorn in a way, or maybe it's just, like, it's more fun to write about or something. Do you know what I mean? But, like, it just that did strike me as, like, wow, this book was written in 1998. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, there's a certain amount of, like, you do get the sense when you read the book that this is a guy who, I think, he's writing it, he's not a super fan of this era.
I agree. It doesn't seem like he loves the movies.
No. But it's like, he loves neither the Spielberg bastardization, or the second half of the decade where it's like the Lucas and the Spielberg, like, he sees that as bullshit, right? But he also sees, I think, the Coppola hype and, the De Palma hype and all that stuff as and a bit of an Emperor Has No Clothes situation too, right?
Yeah, what does he like? Because he writes about film professionally. He's written many books about film and some about TV as well. And, he's a film critic, so I don't understand what he does like.
Right, and I think that that's part of what he's trying to obscure, because he's just telling a story about it. Although, again, like, but he says stuff like, like, One from the Heart is a terrible movie. And it's like, it sort of is, but you would hope that somebody would have, like, a critic would have a little bit more appreciation for that thing, in a way. It feels like he is the kind of person who would say something like, yeah, Kubrick's The Shining, that movie just doesn't work because of X, Y, Z. I don't know, that's just kind of the vibe that I get. He's a little bit of a sort of a precursor of a modern YouTube critic kind of perspective of, like,
I think he especially doesn't care for Coppola that much. He says about Apocalypse Now that in the end it was a disappointment and not a masterpiece. And he presents that subjective bias like a fact. Right. And I think Apocalypse Now is a masterpiece, as do many other people. And maybe that's changed since the 90s. Like, maybe around the 90s it hasn't been revisited as a masterpiece. But I don't know. Like, how can you say that? Like, it's fact.
I feel like he's a person who lets the extra textual things affect his view of stuff. Like, he is the kind of person who's, like, reading the trades, following the narrative about a film. And, right, like, as we said, the whole thing with Apocalypse Now is it's a movie that's saying, okay, I'm trying to make a masterpiece here. Like, do you think it's a masterpiece? And it's certainly not, an 1,000% ultra touchdown perfect masterpiece. It's straining to get over so it has a certain, like, element that you could, I think, latch onto and be like, oh yeah, it's not achieving its goals. But it's like, I don't understand. It feels like it's a certain kind of bitterness that makes me think that calcifies these sorts of opinions. People wanting to take down masterpieces or
bitterness does come through. I think he does strike, because I was curious about what type of person he is. When you read the book, he clearly loves hearing all this juicy stuff. So right. I guess I kind of expected him to be a bit more flashy, but then watching interviews with him, he's just very academic.
Right.
And so I guess I understand what you're saying about him being a bit school marmish.
Well,
like, he doesn't come across as an asshole in interviews.
No.
He just seems like an academic. That's all.
To me, it strikes me as it's a real kind of, like, perspective that I think gets casually thrown around by a certain kind of smart, hip, I guess I'll say urban as another adjective, kind of, intellectual person who wants to be like, the 60s, the hippies, that really was a sort of a failed movement. Or, like, it's this perspective of, like, man, those guys really crashed and burned. And, I sort of understand how people can see things like encouraging taking drugs or encouraging free love and stuff like that as, these are extremely weird, still not quite mainstream things. But it's also like, I sense that there's often a certain kind of, like, a repressed person who's reacting to these things and is sort of really eager to be like, yeah, that was all a little excessive, don't you think?
Yeah, to some extent, but not fully. Like, I don't think it's, like, fully that
again,
type of...
It's a 90s book. I'm sorry to keep saying that. But, like, again, like, I grew up in the 90s. It's like Austin Powers. Like, when I watch Austin Powers, that's a movie that's from the perspective of the late 90s, looking back at the 60s. And it's this very, like, whew, we really were going crazy and not thinking of everything right. And now we're in a more sober time. And I think now we look back on that 90s perspective as a little bit different, but
we still look back at the 60s and 70s as, wow, that was a lot of drugs and they were trying a lot of stuff. They, like, hippies are still hippies, even from the 2020s looking back. He said at the end, in terms of to what degree they succeeded or failed and them being assholes, he basically said, like, yes, the New Hollywood people were all assholes, but if they weren't, they wouldn't have been able to stand up to the system. And he said that individual revolutionaries succeeded, but the revolution as a whole failed because the studios were just using them. So I actually think that that's a pretty good way to look at it. It's not coming down to finger wagging at them. It's recognizing that different personalities, I don't want to, like, apologize for asshole directors out there, but I don't know, it doesn't seem like he's coming down too moralizing on them.
No, I think he actually specifically says, like, they are no worse than any directors ever. This is what directors are like. Like, that is explicitly his perspective. He actually uses the term sociopaths. I think that he thinks that, right, he doesn't blame them, but he does think they're kind of bad people, as all movie people kind of are, I think, to him.
Yeah. And I guess I agree with that.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I mean, not saying that all directors are assholes, but, like, a lot of them from that era did seem to be assholes. And we celebrate the people who are, taking charge and have a clear vision and are ordering people around and treating people like shit. And, we're not celebrating as much the directors like Hal Ashby, who come across as, like, really nice to the people that they work with.
Yeah, but I do think that there's two sides to this coin, which is, like, the more that he says, oh, that's just what they're like, that kind of almost sounds like excusing it in a way, or, like, making a certain kind of, like, well, you gotta get like that if you want to make a movie.
I didn't feel like he did that too much in the book. That wasn't the impression I
did
got
just reread the
it.
last chapter. So I am kind of mostly going off of a lot of this stuff. Like, I did today just reread the last chapter. So I know he explicitly said some of this, this stuff.
Well, I just recently read the whole book, and that wasn't the impression I got from the whole book.
Yeah.
But different people take different things from it.
Oh, no.
Of course, like any piece of work.
Definitely, of course. But he does go out of his way to say, like, this crop burned out earlier.
Yes.
That other directors in other eras lasted longer than this group on the whole.
But he says because they got success too early. And it went to their head, and they weren't really mature enough.
I think a lot of drugs, too, is a big
and a lot of drugs,
part of it, yeah.
So I want to hear, what were some of the anecdotes you liked? Or maybe not necessarily liked, but what were some of the like really juicy stuff you remember from the book?
I don't know if I have a favorite one, but I mean, I guess I do have a favorite one, to be honest, which is, it's just, I believe they attribute it to Jack Nicholson, although I can't be sure. I don't know why I'm, being especially careful in this instance of who I'm attributing these quotes to, or, if I'm getting the details wrong or whatever. I don't know how much Biskind really was. But talking about Robert Evans using cocaine on his penis to make himself last longer in bed, but then ultimately it backfiring and making him impotent.
Yeah, I mean, that's
quite
a story.
When you're telling me that somebody just said this to you in an interview and they said you could put it in a book.
Yeah, who told that story?
I think he said it was Jack Nicholson said this to him.
In terms of, how do you get people to say these things? He had about 400 hours worth of interviews with people, and he said it's really a question of critical mass. There are always going to be people out there who won't talk to you. But once you put it to them who is talking, they see the attraction of putting their side of events. So if he's making it seem like a lot of other people are sharing stories, then you might be more likely to share your own crazy stories.
Yeah, he also said that people ask him all the time, how did you get people to talk to you? And he said it wasn't hard at all. They were like totally ready to talk. Because when he was interviewing them, it was in the past. And it's just, I guess he's always getting the craziest quote about one person from another person, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it would just, I don't know, it just seems like such a crazy way to make a book. Because, Biskind, this book was hated by everybody that was in it. And Biskind reportedly felt bad about that. Like, he was like, oh no, you didn't like that I wrote this book? Like,
I mean,
what? I mean, did you read the stuff you wrote with every single person? Like, name a person who's portrayed positively.
Yeah, I mean, he shouldn't have been surprised about that.
Maybe Charlie Bluthorn is perhaps the most positive portrayed person?
I think maybe the Schrader brothers.
No way.
Because everything that was in there about both of them came from their own mouths, I felt. So that was one of my favorite parts of the book, is reading about the Schrader brothers, because it felt way more heartfelt and less scandalous. It wasn't really about who was sleeping with whom. It was actually about like pretty deep stuff. And I felt like it was stuff that they offered up. And when you read interviews with Schrader, like, he is just very forthcoming about a lot of stuff.
That's true.
So I think that was my favorite part, and it was because it wasn't mean-spirited, and it was coming from the people that he was talking about.
That's true. The Schrader story is a story of a breakup of a partnership between brothers, and sort of one person cannibalizing the talent of the other person.
And also just about the struggles and the dark places that each brother went through on their own, given their family history and their mental health.
Yeah. No, I mean, and Schrader, it's so funny, like, Schrader, at the end of the book, it's like, Schrader faded off into obscurity, never to be heard from again. It's like, check back in 2020s, man. I mean, he's like one of the hottest people around.
Yeah, for sure. I have some juicy stuff that I took note of. Well, I guess one anecdote I liked was he described a situation in the summer of 1972 where Bogdanovich was in one car and Coppola and Friedkin were in another, and they were all leaving a party around the same time, and they pulled up next to each other, and they were all like big deals at that point. And so they just started like drunkenly quoting and shouting the positive reviews of their own movies through the sunroofs to brag to each other about how good their own films were. And it just like sounded like a really cute, like, I mean, annoying, like, we're masters of the universe type behavior, but it sounded like a cute, like, interaction between the three of them. So I like that story.
I mean, and that really exemplifies sort of one of the key thrusts of this book, and what makes this era so much more interesting than the other eras I think that Biskind has written about. I just read his book on the 90s, the Weinsteins and the Sundance generation. I forget what it's called or whatever, but it's about the independent thing. And that's just not a story in the same way that the 70s people are a story, largely because it's a tale of like this friend group that also like coalesces and then kind of breaks apart.
Yes. One of the overall impressions this book gave me of New Hollywood was that everybody was friends with everybody, and it was a total boys club where if you were good at parties, then you'll get hired for the movies. And it also seemed like Jack Nicholson was at the center of everything.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I couldn't tell if that was just that he interviewed a lot of people who had stories to tell involving Jack Nicholson, and it was just like a biased thing, or if Jack Nicholson truly was just, finger in every pie type, like everybody loved him.
He's in every fucking movie. I mean, Nicholson does a Polanski, a Rafelson, Foreman, did I say Ashby?
No.
Yeah, he does an Ashby. Nicholson's in fucking every movie, and he knows everybody. And yeah, he's the connective force going back to Roger Corman and all of those. I mean, he is coming up with all of those directors in the same period. But this is, it's the tale of these people who are all close friends with each other, and they all sort of gamble on each other and investing in each other's movies and kind of giving each other their starts. And so this creates a lot of close bonds, but then it also creates the pathway for them all to fall apart when it's like, oh, now I'm not going to bet on you now that I'm big and you're in need, because that's not my style, man. And it's like, there's a lot of mixing business and pleasure that I think you can learn from in this.
Yeah, especially when it tells the story of American zoetrope.
Right. Of course.
And how it failed. All right, I think in terms of juicy stuff, the most salacious thing I remember reading was about a prostitute they were kind of friends with, and she died. And so some of them, I don't remember who exactly, snorted her ashes after she died.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That's so fucked up.
I mean, this was so big in books of this era. I guess this is around the time as, like, The Dirt and stuff. This is just... I mean, it's the tell-all. I guess it's like post-OJ, and it's just, is this a thing that do people buy juicy books anymore? I don't think it's really a thing.
I mean, I think celebrity gossip is still a thing. It's just you don't buy books about it. I mean, people can't even be bothered to read entire articles. Like, the juicy gossip is just whatever headline you scroll past on social media.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's so weird because I really do think this book kind of, like, created the template for how you talk about this period, and I do think that it meant to criticize these people, but I don't think that that's how it really ultimately is remembered. I think it's just remembered as, like, oh, that's the book about the Movie Brats, and, like, that is the story of the things that happened in the 70s. And
yeah, in terms of its influence, I feel like a lot of people, that they'll criticize it when they read it, but they'll come away from it remembering the impressions the book gave them about different people. And so when they think, what was Coppola like? Right. They're going to remember how Easy Rider's Raging Bulls depicted Coppola. Yeah. And they might not remember that Easy Rider's Raging Bulls put that in their heads, but that stuck with people, I think. And that is harmful if it's inaccurate, but maybe it was accurate, like, who's to say?
But let's just say, let's just kind of go do you want to go through some people?
Yeah.
Let's just kind of toss off, like, what you would say your basic impression that this book gives you of Francis Ford Coppola. Like what is the picture this book paints?
Megalomaniac.
Yeah. I think uncool kid who got popular.
Yeah, that was a lot of them.
Like, right.
That a
genius, and yet he drank his own Kool-Aid. Like, he got high on his own supply, read his own reviews. One of the interesting things about Coppola is, towards the end of the 70s, he becomes so intertwined with his own work, and he's, like, putting his own life and his family and his sanity into the process. And it's, like, this method filmmaking thing. And I think the book kind of, like, portrays, like, his affair as this extension of, like, him just, like, trying to let his life go crazy, man. And it depicts, like, this the relationship between him and Eleanor that's very, like, though they have an understanding, or that, like...
I didn't really get the sense...
I think it's, like, poor Eleanor. I think it's a little bit,
it's poor Eleanor. It's
poor Eleanor, like, she...
I didn't get the sense that, like, they were like, oh, this is a good understanding that they had. I felt like it presented all of the jilted wives and girlfriends as
very uncool.
Just getting screwed over.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and which I don't get. Like, I don't. I mean, it's not that I don't get that happened. It's just I don't understand why that was so often the case. That like, because I think a lot of these guys like they didn't care if their wives. Like, I don't know why more people weren't poly back then. You know what I mean? Like, it does seem like there was just a lot of like, one half of the relationship is going crazy and the other half is still stuck in an earlier paradigm sometimes.
I think things evolve over time, and I think one of the stages of the evolution of relationships is, okay, let's try out free love and you can have sex with whoever, but it's not accompanied by long talks with your partners to make sure they're all okay with certain things and really laying strong foundations where you're being empathetic. It's more like clutching your freedoms and not worrying so much about the other people that you're influencing. It's the first is like going extreme in one direction where you're completely disregarding the idea of being beholden to the people you're in relationships with. And then I think like over time, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't work super well, which is what you can see in this book. Like, people get their feelings hurt.
Yeah, I think it's also just like a lot of people like not knowing what conversations they need to have, like, because there's sort of something in the air, but they don't know whether or not their spouse has caught the same thing or whatever. And it's just, I'm just imagining all these times where you're just like, you're a housewife at home, and then all of a sudden, like, this big party comes in, and you're like, oh, it's this party. And it's like, this is a key party, right? And it's like, oh, okay. And, like, that's kind of my image. It's just like, we're smoking dope at this party. Here you go. And it's like, oh, well.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked before about how it's so much harder to be poly if you are in a monogamous relationship that you're trying to transition to a poly one versus starting off a new relationship as a poly one.
But this has the added benefit of, like, what, you're not cool? Like, we're all doing this right now.
Yeah, that makes it worse.
I know.
It's more pressure.
But in a way, it puts more pressure on people, but it also makes some people, I guess, not have that immediate question of, like, are you trying to trick me? Because it's just like, I guess this is what we're doing now,
I know what you mean, but it's definitely the wrong reason to get into it. It's just because you think it's cool, and that's what everybody else is doing.
I'm not saying it's I'm not saying it's a good reason at all. I'm just describing what it would have been like then. When it was something that was, anyways.
I think folliness is something that has just evolved the way like many other things and cultures have evolved. And the 60s was ready for a step towards that direction, but it wasn't ready for poly in general. Or it wasn't ready for all the stuff that actually goes into being poly.
I think it was a lot of people who weren't very good at talking about their feelings at all, like in a monogamous relationship or any kind of relationship.
Right.
Just watch their films, and that's how you'll get to know them.
But in terms of the women depicted in the book, all of the women in this book are described through their relationship with the men.
Yes.
Because, of course, New Hollywood is dominated by men. And so they were all either willing mistresses or wronged wives. And I guess there are a couple.
Margot Kidder is kind of a person.
Who?
Margot Kidder.
I don't even remember her.
I mean, she definitely dates somebody, but she is like a character. I mean, she's at a.
I don't remember her.
If you don't remember her, I don't know. Like, they paint her as kind of like a cool chick. I don't know. I'm not doing a great job.
Yeah, you're really selling us on this person.
But no, I'm just saying, like, Margot Kidder gets sort of like some perspective thrown on her.
Yeah, there are some women, like Polly Platt, I think, is treated as a jilted woman, but also a creative in her own right.
And I can't remember, does he pull the whole, like, Bogdanovich really lost it after he left Platt stuff? Which I guess that's everybody just kind of thinks that's the case.
Yeah, but does everybody think that's the case because Biskind described it that way?
Well,
it's so hard to know.
Well, Bogdanovich does have that very clear, like, demarcation point of when the movie started getting shitty.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about Bogdanovich in a second. Or do you want to do Bogdanovich now? I guess, like...
Oh, I wanted to say one thing in terms of how it depicted women.
Yeah, go on. Get it in now. We will not be talking about it again.
I read this IndieWire interview where it said that one of the smartest things Biskind did was to talk to the spurned wives of filmmakers and women who weren't given enough credit for their contributions, because they're going to be talking, So if you want somebody to talk, like, pick the spurned people.
I just have to say, if you do, any Grateful Dead book or anything like that, where they talk to the women about, like, how crazy was this, obviously at least somewhat misogynistic, late 60s hippie scene, all of the women in the Dead scene are always very like, oh, I was having a great time. Like, I was doing my thing. It's not like I think that the Grateful Dead or those, hippies in, like, the sort of Marin scene were more emotionally mature than some of these directors, but I kind of wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think
these directors seem like such...
They're children.
Children.
Yeah, it sucks.
But Coppola, okay, so again, to put a cap in it, he really thinks Coppola is not an auteur. Like, and the Coppola ultimately became a sort of lost figure who wanted to make studio movies just to be able to make anything, and like had no vision after his early success.
He did say the ugly truth is that some directors never had much to say in the first place. He said that right after talking about Friedkin's failed career, but you do get the sense that he thinks that about Coppola as well.
I would say that, okay, let's move on to Friedkin, because I think Friedkin, I think that's a valid take on... Friedkin is one of the most, his best work is to be found in the 1970s, and he has some interesting stuff after that. It's not like he disappeared and never made anything else. He made a lot of stuff that you can easily compare to the 70s work, find it lacking, and he himself will say it's not as good.
Yeah. In terms of how he's depicted in the book, I don't know. I don't think I got a strong impression of him from Easy Rider's Raging Bulls.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember more my own research that I did in preparation for The Exorcist.
Much of which was no doubt probably like Wikipedia culling from Easy Rider's Raging Bulls.
Yes, that's probably true. He came across as a bad boy type.
Yeah.
Like somebody came up to him afterwards, like he was in the men's bathroom somewhere, and somebody came up to him and was like, oh, I just read Easy Rider's Raging Bulls. I hear you're a real motherfucker.
Yeah.
And Friedkin was like, it's just a book.
I would say that the movie depicts Friedkin as kind of a huge asshole.
The book, you mean?
Yeah. What did I say, the movie?
You said the movie.
Yeah. I would say the book Easy Rider's Raging Bulls depicts Friedkin as like an especially dickish guy. Just sort of alienating people, being unnecessarily cruel at times.
Cold to his romantic partners.
Very much so. And one of the key Friedkin anecdotes, which is they're talking about in the Sorcerer shoot, which is of course a crazy shoot, they're in the jungle, and everyone's saying like Friedkin's being this monster to all of the people he have been hired to work on the film. He's screaming at them constantly, and then in the process of getting a shot, they run over a pig, and Friedkin starts weeping. And, and this guy's like, you motherfucker. And he's just like, the fact that you've been out here screaming at these people all day, and then a fucking pig dies, and that makes you cry, like, you're such an ass. And I'm like, the pig died.
Yeah, like that is
that is worse than a person getting yelled at. I'm not saying it's good to yell at people, but it's like, I don't know. Is that a damning detail that he did care about this as opposed to people? Like, it is worse. Like,
I feel like he came across as an asshole in the book, but also a little complex.
I think he's pretty introspective.
Yeah.
I think he comes off as being, they sort of all have this, they're looking at their career in the late 90s, and it's like, it's clearly hasn't gone perfectly. I think anybody would be a fool to think that the promise that we showed then was completely borne out.
I personally, when I think about the success of filmmakers, if you have even one great movie, in my mind, you're a success. I don't care how many other failures you have.
Yeah.
Like, you're a success in my book. So,
totally. And I like some late Friedkin work. I like Blue Chips.
I haven't seen that much.
You've seen Blue Chips.
Have I?
We've talked about this before. Yeah.
I always forget it then.
Yeah, it's the basketball one, the college basketball one with
Oh,
McNulty.
yeah. Yeah, sure. I like
cool.
sports movies. Yeah. Okay, give me some other
Bogdanovich.
figures.
So, like, we haven't really talked Bogdanovich. Can we just do a quick overview of Peter Bogdanovich?
Yeah. Take us through him.
Yeah, so as quick as I can, I guess. He's one of these critics turned auteur people. He was very involved in that sort of critical reappraisal of older filmmakers like Wells and John Ford. And then he had his tutelage under Roger Corman. Then he makes 3 movies in a row that sort of define the early period of New Hollywood, put him at the top of the heap. Last Picture Show, What's Up, Doc, and Paper Moon. And then after that, he makes 3 movies that exemplify the downfall of his own career as well as the folly of giving these New Hollywood directors too much power. And that's Nickelodeon, Daisy Miller, and then I don't know what the other one is called, but they've all got Sybil Shepherd in them. So, yeah, The Bogdanovich story is he's got this partnership with Polly Platt, who's his art director, set director, and
Production designer.
Production designer. And he leaves her for Sybil Shepherd when they meet on The Last Picture Show. And she's this gorgeous model, and it's this scandalous tabloid fodder. And a lot of people are on Polly Platt's side, and a lot of people think that Polly Platt was responsible for Bogdanovich's early success, and they credit the breakup with being why his movies suck.
Bogdanovich says Platt just lied and took more credit than she deserved, and says that, yeah, she helped out and she was a great person to be a sounding board too, but that's all it was. So he thinks she was just like claiming too much credit, but there was a definite downturn.
Another reason could be that he becomes obsessed with his muse, Sybil Shepherd, and wants to sort of fashion these vehicles for her, and she's not really a great actor, at least at that period.
I always think it's dangerous to design your movies around your girlfriend or boyfriend, because you're going to be a little too blinded by love.
Yeah, and another person said, I think that they said something about, like, yeah, all of the male leads that he casts are opposite. He can't make them hunky enough because they'll be a threat. So the movie's all this weird misshapen thing where you have some twerpy guy and Sybil Shepherd in it, so they have no chemistry, you know? And
because he doesn't want Sybil Shepherd to fall in love with the male lead.
I guess is the presumption there. So then their breakup ends. Then Bogdanovich's life turns from just being him obsessed with movies into the plot of what ultimately is made into a movie by Bob Fosse, which is he is with Dorothy Stratton, the Playboy playmate, who gets murdered by her ex-husband. And yeah, Bob Fosse makes a movie about it called Star 80, and it's a super fucked up story. More tabloids, more craziness for Peter Bogdanovich, and yeah, it's a very he's got the most sobering end in a lot of ways of anybody.
Yeah, that's so shitty. Like, your partner gets murdered.
He later marries her younger sister.
That's also fucked up.
Yeah.
Obviously not as fucked up as somebody getting murdered.
No. But I'm just saying, like, it's dark, man.
It's so dark.
You know what I mean? Like, it's Bogdanovich, man. You got to give it up. But I think, yeah. So what's the picture that you would say? Like, I think it's sort of, he's like this pedantic nerd who suddenly gets hot women and it turns him into an idiot. Like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah, I feel like Biskind actually kind of, in a way, spent more time on Sybil Shepherd. I feel like Biskind is very mean-spirited in a lot of different instances of the book, and we'll go through some of those later. But one of the things he says about Sybil Shepherd is he describes this encounter where Shepherd is sitting on the floor and was reading Dostoevsky, but when somebody asked her what book she was reading, she said she couldn't remember the title. And it just paints her as really stupid.
They had one scene that I think tried to paint her as like, dumb as a fox or whatever. That was where Peter was, obsessively trying to teach her something about an old John Huston movie, and she was like, "Oh yeah," and then she turned to the friend or something and did like the, "Oh my god, he's so this guy's so fucking annoying."
Yeah, I don't like the way he tried to make it a point that Sybil Shepherd was stupid and right. Also like annoyed at Bogdanovich for just being a film nerd. I don't know. It does just feel mean-spirited to me. I understand being on Polly Platt's side. I totally understand that. And if I met both of the women, I probably wouldn't like Sybil Shepherd that much. But that doesn't mean it's right to like paint her as a dumb blonde bimbo in your book.
I mean, yeah, no, it's true.
I already said I think that it paints the Schraders kind of interestingly.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We'll do producers in a second, and we can kind of do them all at once, I guess. If you want. But
I feel like, Lucas, for example, this is a person that he tries to paint as, like, I think a pretty accurate picture. He's actually a little sympathetic to Lucas in a way. I think he sees that this is a person who's incredibly socially awkward. I think it shows him sort of being golden handcuffed to the Star Wars franchise in a way that's obviously proved to be true to how Lucas views it. And I think it depicts his marriage, or the dissolution of his marriage to Marcia Lucas in a very, like, he just stopped trying kind of way. That's kind of, it's like, obviously he sucks, but it seems like he comes off as this weird sad sack for, like, being a billionaire. Like, I don't know. Like,
yeah, I think it did present him as a little bit selfish when it came time to, in terms of like his financial success versus Coppola then wanting help.
No, but that's all, like, I actually feel like it's kind of weirdly sympathetic to Lucas being like, yeah, Coppola financed American Graffiti, but he also made a lot of money from American Graffiti. I helped him out too. That wasn't like just a favor that he did for me. Like, it worked out for him. He wants me to invest in something that I don't think is going to make money. Like, American Graffiti was a good investment for Coppola. So why should I make a bad investment in Zoetrope?
Yeah.
It's not like I agree with that perspective, but like, I think the book is painting Lucas as just like, I get that you think I'm an asshole for that. And of course he could afford it. Like, like that's like, I don't know why he probably could have afforded it. But I guess maybe you start resenting things if money's on such a huge scale.
I felt like it was resentment,
like,
was the thing that was painted in the book.
Yeah.
As the reason why he didn't give the money. But also,
which
Coppola
is weird because Coppola basically made his career.
Yeah,
so then,
but Coppola was very fast and loose with his money. So
yes, right.
People shouldn't be emulating Coppola in the way that he spends his money. Although, I don't know, at the same time, like, you've only got one life to live. Might as well spend all your money on something you love.
Yeah.
How about Spielberg?
I think it paints Spielberg as a non-artist, kind of, right? Like, do you think so? I mean, like, I feel like it paints him as being a genius of clearly seeing what was coming. But I don't think that this book has any kind of reverence for Spielberg as far as what his body of work has accomplished.
Well, it doesn't for anybody. I don't think it really paints any of them as
it does.
An artist. Ashby?
Well, Ashby has, is certainly not a complete body of work, but just really quick, do you know I would say the one artist that is portrayed in quotes by other people, they never discuss him directly in the book, but he's a looming presence haunting everybody in this book because they're like, that's the guy who's really doing it. That's the real auteur.
Who?
Woody Allen.
Oh, you're right.
That's the one that they're all like, this is the American auteur. That's like, he fucking sits down, it comes out of his Woody Allen-ness, and he puts it on screen, and it's exactly right. Makes another movie next year. Same deal. Like,
it is weird that they don't talk about him a lot. I mean, he was so separate from the movie Brats,
right?
I guess.
But also, it's not like Woody Allen didn't have, a rise and fall arc at that point. That's not the late 90s. Is certainly not the high point of Allen appreciation.
Yeah, I would say Woody Allen's definitely somebody who the book left out.
And left out, and yet weirdly has this unimpeachable respect for. And like, I mean, Coppola literally says, he's like, if I could have had any career, that would be the one. Like that, he can't help but make his movies every time. And Coppola's like, I'm obviously a person who can subsume their talent into making The Rainmaker or making Bram Stoker's Dracula. I
want to get back to Spielberg though.
Yeah,
for
Spielberg.
a sec before we keep moving on to other people.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the things the book painted about him was that he was really greedy and selfish and didn't give out credit to the people who deserved it.
Yeah.
Like his editor for Jaws, Verna Fields, definitely the book posits that she had way more of a contribution to it than she was given credit to, and that Spielberg often wanted to put his own name at the end of the movies for different roles when he should have been giving more credit to other people. So he came off poorly, in my opinion. Spielberg later told Roger Ebert that every single word in that book about me is either erroneous or a lie.
I'm not somebody who wants to stick up for Spielberg, much on an artistic level. And it's not because I don't appreciate his work. I really don't, especially his early work, which is the most celebrated in a lot of ways, like, it doesn't really speak to me. But I do feel like this book basically doesn't have any real appreciation for Spielberg. And I wonder if that, again, is also a matter of not having the last 25 years of Spielberg. Because I really think late era Spielberg has done a lot to show a different side of him. I don't know if it's many people's favorite period of time in it, but I think that it paints Spielberg as like this hack or something. He's just super Hollywood or whatever.
I do think it paints him as a little bit of a hack.
I think if Spielberg is having a warmth to his work and to everything about, and it's this movie seems to have no faith in, or this book seems to have, I'm so used to saying like this movie, which is something I should stop saying so much on the pod. I feel like every other fucking word sometimes is just like, this movie does this, but what this movie does is this movie is, But I don't think it has any real respect for Spielberg.
But again, it doesn't have respect for any of them. Like, every time when we say this, it's like, none of them come across well.
I guess he thinks that people like these movies enough that their reputations will be unaffected by this stuff. But I feel like eventually, I feel like kind of this stuff is going to be the only thing that anybody cares about a lot of these movies, you know? Like, they'll just hear these wild tales.
Biskind's reaction to the negative responses he got was he found them upsetting, that people were so upset about it, and he didn't blame them for being angry, but he said for people like Coppola, for example, their place in film history is secure. So he didn't feel that bad about creating this negative portrayal of them because I think he did feel like they weren't in danger of having their reputations ruined. And it is interesting how successful this book was, and I do feel like it maybe had a bigger influence than he thought it was going to on how people remember these figures.
It's a version of a reaction against the 60s that's not coming from total reactionaries, but it's coming from people who consider themselves to be, you know, liberal-minded people, but who see a lot of the folly of, you know, the boomer revolution, I think.
Yeah.
Ashby?
Tragic?
Yeah, tragic. It's pretty nice to Ashby.
Yeah, it's not mean. I don't remember any salacious story about him.
Well, no, there's stories about, like, you know, him getting patted down for drugs and stuff like there's a lot of, like...
drug-related
stuff. But it's, like, that stuff is very, look at these fun 70s antics.
Right.
Kind of thing. Like, that is... Ashby is really, like, the sort of, like, he's, like, the dude in the book. I mean, but again, like, the book ends on his funeral. It's a very bittersweet note. I guess that this book is probably part of the larger... reclamation of Ashby in general, I think, right?
Maybe. It's so hard for me to know what people were thinking about these guys before the book came out versus after. I just think, from my perspective, I have no way of knowing. I mean, you have a little bit better of a perspective just because of...
Well, I just know Ashby was kind of lost because, like, his works weren't that popular at the time.
Right.
And then he made a bunch of movies that really didn't work for a while, and then he died. I know that, like, this stuff came back, like, and was appraised later. And I would not be surprised if this book and its portrayal of Ashby, it doesn't have any, like, because there is salacious stuff about Ashby. I mean, he literally, like, he was gonna adopt a child, and then they didn't do it the day that they were going to adopt her. If you remember, like, he did all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But this book didn't get into any of that.
I think it got into a little bit how he didn't have great relationships with people. Like, it was hard to know him.
Yeah, probably. But, you know, Ashby and a lot of these people, you know, the tales that they're giving them is also, like, fighting with the studios, right? Or, like...
Yeah.
Trying to gain sort of creative control or trick studios or trick conglomerates that own studios into thinking that something was a commercial prospect.
Yeah. I think... As much as this book comes down on the directors, I think it comes down harder on the studios.
Although, again, like, I feel like Charlie Bluhdorn, in a way, is one of the most non-Wardy figures. He's the sort of the benevolent Austrian head of Gulf and Western, which buys Paramount.
This is the thing.
You don't know this stuff?
He talked
Okay.
extensively about the different producers, but when you're going to ask me what my impressions were of the different ones, I'm going to say I don't remember who was who. There were stories about producers. Some of them were super radical and involved with the Black Panthers and got really into that. Some of them just, like, created this environment where it was just like, oh, come on in, take some drugs, and they created amazing stuff. Like, some of them were a little too conservative. They were assholes. Like, I don't remember who's who. Like, I really can't. I don't have it wasn't clear to me which producer was which.
Let's do Paramount and Gulf and Western, right?
And by it'll be you.
So Charlie Bluhdorn is the head of Gulf and Western, which is just like a major multinational corporation that happens to buy Paramount Pictures, okay? His line is like, I make money from, like, zinc and iron that I am shipping across the world. Like, this movie thing is, I'm not expecting to make money from that. He ends up putting Robert Evans in charge of Paramount as the vice president head of production. You know, it's through Robert Evans' stewardship that you get the environment that starts focusing on, like, IP acquisition in The Godfather and Love Story, and investing in screenwriters like Robert Towne and stuff. And, like, the Paramount is really the central studio Do you see this? Do you get this?
I mean, I understand what you just said. I understand the words you just said. But when you said, like, oh, you know this stuff. No, I don't.
This isn't the kid stays in the picture and stuff. Is what I'm not saying you know it, but I'm saying I've seen this information pass in front of your eyeballs.
Yes, and it instantly goes out of my head. That's what I'm trying to say, is things that involve the producers, they don't stick.
But he's not a producer. That's what I'm saying. Bluenhorn is...
Whatever, studio execs.
He's not even a studio exec. That's what I'm saying. He's
People
the
who
corporate
own
head.
studios.
He's the corporate head of Gulf and Western that owns Paramount in this period.
Whatever. It's still involved with the production company. You know what the fuck I mean. Stop being all nitpicky.
No.
The stuff just in one ear, out the other for me. And I don't know why. I think probably because they're not as interesting to me. I would love, if I were to be involved in making movies at all, I would want to be a producer because I feel... Well, I'm not artistically talented enough to be involved in any other way, but also because I love movies and I want to be able to make movies happen. I want to be able to make the movies that I want to see happen, and I would love to be able to help people make them happen. So if I ever get really rich, I'm just going to spend my money helping other people achieve their goals of making amazing movies. So it's funny that, like, all of the producer stuff doesn't stick in my brain, but it just doesn't.
The producer job is basically like the most amorphous job that there is, and it has no definition, and it can mean endless numbers of things. Sometimes it can be an extremely creative position, and sometimes it can be completely hands-off, and different people work in different ways. And like, it means nothing to say that you're a producer.
Yeah. I think that one of the points of this book was to try and present the producers as well, because that hadn't really been done before. It's just funny that, like, it made a special point of trying to do that, and clearly it worked for you in getting a better idea of who these guys were. It didn't work for me. I guess just in general about producers, like, there's a lot more people we could talk about, but I don't feel like I can actually talk about them that well because I don't remember their specific personalities. But if you are at all interested,
read the
book.
I'm currently going to say that I'm planting our flag now that we will be doing a special episode on Alan Ladd Jr. and his tenure at Fox specifically, that we will be tentatively titling The Lad Stays in the Picture, the brilliant career of Alan Ladd Jr.
Yes. We will cover some producers.
We will do that at some point, but maybe not until next year. Anyways.
Okay, other people. Altman. How do you feel Altman came across?
Yeah, I think, it's kooky old Altman, part of this wave of unfortunate early in the decade success that caused all of the stupid decisions to get made, I think. And like total burnout, like failure after failure in the second half of the decade. And then moving, and he's off to obscurity, except maybe he's coming back a little bit in the 90s and 2000s when the book's being written.
I didn't get the sense that he was portrayed as, like, a megalomaniac like the other directors. Like, no. I got the sense that he was portrayed competent and he could make his movies cheaply, so he was given a lot of freedom to do so, and that he suffered from, later on, just continuing to make more art pictures while other people made more blockbusters, like Star Wars and Jaws. So I feel like he came off pretty well, which is interesting because he had a very strong negative reaction to the book.
Right.
He said it was hate mail. We were all lured into talking to this guy because people thought he was a straight guy, but he was filling a commission from the publisher for a hatchet job. He's the worst kind of human being I know. And apparently in the San Francisco Chronicle, Altman said he wished Biskind were dead. That's so extreme.
It's pretty extreme, but at the same time, like, the negativity rises off of the words on the page of this book, in my opinion. Like,
oh yeah, for sure. Like, he repeatedly calls people star fuckers.
Yes.
And one time I opened a random page in the book to find my place because my bookmark fell out, and the first sentence that caught my eye was, well, I wouldn't want to fuck her, which just is a perfect example of the kind of thing that this book does. It's just negatively portraying the ugliness of the people involved.
Yeah, there's the story about what's her name? Natasha, the Starved Cat people. Do you know her name?
No.
Natasha Konami, I think, maybe her name, but she's the Starved Cat people, right? She gets involved in this very salacious thing where she goes and tells a producer that Paul Schrader shot a picture of her vagina, and
Right, I remember this.
that she's like, he promised he won't put it in the movie, and the guy's like, oh, geez, let me call Schrader, sort this out. And he's like, are you putting beaver shots in this? And Schrader's just like, oh, God, this girl, she's got me wrapped around her finger. And it's just like personal problems, man. And then later, they say that Schrader went and confronted her later on when she was with some stud, and the quote that Biskind has from her is, Paul, I always fuck my directors, and with you, it was difficult. Like, who did he get that quote from? Did she did not claim to say that, did she? Did Schrader claim that she was saying that too? Like, you know, like...
I know. It's hard to know what to believe and what not to believe in this book. And we'll get to that in a second.
It's not that I don't believe people say crazy shit or did crazy stuff. It's just, it's the exactness of a lot of these quotes, to me, that reads as very fake.
Yes.
But again,
like,
maybe it's just the person telling the story is a good storyteller.
I think
and they
that's
tell
probably
it
what
exactly
it is.
Right.
I doubt that Biskind made anything up.
Right.
But when people are telling stories,
It's just like, this doesn't sound true, man. Yeah, like it's printing the legend.
Yeah,
is the philosophy that you're seeing.
That Sybil Shepherd story I told earlier about her sitting on the floor and reading a Dostoevsky and not remembering the title. I'm like, who remembered that?
Yeah, right.
You know, that was very specific.
There was these little details where somebody told a story that was like, Bogdanovich in the late 80s one time came up to him and he was like, it was so sad. He said, hi, do you remember me? I used to be Peter Bogdanovich. And it's just, I thought of that as like, I bet that is something that Bogdanovich said to this guy, and this guy will never forget that, and Bogdanovich probably doesn't remember, or like maybe he had a whole period of saying that to everybody, but he still wouldn't even necessarily remember that he used to say that to people, you know?
That does sound like a thing somebody would think it's cute to say.
And if Peter Bogdanovich said this, or like, imagine like Coppola saying that, or somebody, you know what I mean? You're just like, wow, God. Like,
it is a good lesson that if you're famous,
yeah,
be careful what you say to people, because they will remember, and they might tell that story later.
Right, it's like, I think Friedkin is a really remorseful figure, to go back to him. Like, I think he comes out of this being like, you know, I was an asshole, and that basically ruined my career at the end. Like, it prevented me from getting the studio projects later on that I wanted. So. He's
so interesting because I remember it describing him as like having this interaction with his girlfriend's father, who was kind of giving him shit for making pretentious films.
Because he's a director. Is it Huston or Ford?
I don't remember.
It's, yeah.
But Friedkin was basically like, yeah, you know what? Why shouldn't I? I should just make more like pictures that everybody would love and not be so artsy about it. It was kind of interesting. Dennis Hopper.
Right. So I guess he's the early breakout star of the book.
Yeah. And the book posits that a lot of the freedom of their era actually died after the last movie by Dennis Hopper. And he has this Oliver Stone quote saying, the end of the 70s began at the beginning of the 70s. And that is interesting to think about when we think about that extreme freedom, that it is all towards the beginning of the 70s that it happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's like The Godfather is a huge leap forward in cinema, but it's not the crazy gamble like Easy Rider is.
Yeah, it's not as artistically crazy and out there.
And I mean, so Hopper, you know, it's not like, I don't think this book could have portrayed Hopper in a more controversial way than Hopper is well known to be.
It's just, he just is a crazy figure.
A crazy figure who's like a total asshole, like wife beater.
Yeah.
The partnership that he has with Peter Fonda seems to be painted as very mercenary on both of their sides. They don't seem to genuinely like each other. Like, they just kind of, it's like, I think he wanted to get a little bit of that Fonda insidery cred, and Fonda wanted to get some of that outsidery rebel cred with Hopper, and that's sort of their partnership that made Easy Rider, I think, was kind of cynical, almost, from the get-go, in a way. Not that they didn't want to make this different kind of movie, but I don't think they ever liked each other, really.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they
it didn't seem like a great friendship or anything like that.
It's like Hopper doesn't seem to like any person ever, and nobody seems to like Hopper.
He's just so mentally unstable.
Yeah.
And, I don't think that the book played that up. I think he's just like that.
You're kind of right. No, and it almost didn't. It almost didn't one wonders if it's like with Hopper, you can just print exactly what happened, and with somebody like Coppola, you got to massage the details to make it look a little bit more like a story.
Totally. I think Coppola complained that Biskind purposefully sought out people who had bad opinions about Coppola.
Yeah, right.
And got interviews with them to dig up dirt. But
whereas, like, try and find a good opinion about Hopper.
yeah, I mean, I think he's really interesting.
Yeah.
But he's a total asshole and, like you said, wife beater and not mentally okay.
Yeah. But yes, I mean, he is the ultimate example of, like, he is actually, you know, as much as, like, Altman's persona is like, I'm a wild man, I live for anarchy and chaos in my sets, and who knows what's going to happen. And whereas Hopper is actually, it's like that Saturday Night Live sketch where Alice goes and hangs out with the Mad Hatter and the Dormouse, and they're both just actually insane and, like, saying, like, and I like to build little action figures out of my feces and talk to them and stuff. It's like, oh, that's not mad. That's actually just insane, sir. And yeah, I mean, Hopper, it's just like he's just the kind of person who you could imagine just coming in and pitching a movie and being like, this movie's just going to be about a guy who just pisses right in your face, man. And that's what America needs. And if you don't get it, then fuck you. And Suits are like, I mean, I don't like it, but I think he's right.
There's this quote in the book from producer Ned Tannen explaining how the freedom that the studios gave the directors was not just because the studios realized how out of touch they were, but also because they just didn't want to have to interact with the hippie directors.
Yeah.
And they just wanted to give them the money to make the movies and then not have to deal with them anymore. And I feel like Hopper is one of the main ones that pushed that forward. So maybe he's, like, to thank for a lot of the freedoms that people got early on in the studio system, because he was just so crazy, and Easy Rider was such a success that people are like, okay, we'll deal with you, I guess, but as minimally as possible. Hopper clearly could have used some more oversight, and, like, Easy Rider came out great, but his other stuff not so much. And I think if he had somebody holding the leash a bit tighter, maybe some of his stuff could have come out as a realized finished thing that was also coherent.
Yeah, I mean, his movies sound. I haven't seen the last movie. Have you? Like,
no, I haven't.
Nobody has. I mean, it's like he was pointing his camera at the world that was going insane, and maybe, you know, he was just happened to be there with the camera, and then when the world stopped going quite as insane in quite the same way, he's just not really very adept at capturing, you know, that subject matter. Maybe
he's also just, like, a little too crazy to.
Or maybe just, like, a little too
make
sexy
the movies, because it requires quite a lot of coordination and being with it to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I do think that he was, like, a pretty functional drug addict as far as they go. It's just, I don't know if he was a functional artist.
Yeah.
Ever. But, and, like, Easy Riders just happened to be the kind of shit that nobody had ever seen. I'm so excited to do Easy Riders.
Me too. I can't wait. Oh, Peter Fonda's so hot.
It's true. He's very hot.
And I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that's great about that movie aside from Peter Fonda being hot. But I love that movie. It's so cool. Sometimes I put it on first dates to impress my dates that I've got cool taste.
Has it worked?
Yeah.
You got some?
We didn't make it all the way through the movie.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Okay, Robert Towne.
Yeah, the recently departed.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
This book doesn't really present him that well,
Oh,
just like everybody
God, no.
else.
No,
you know.
but he's one of these real pieces of work.
I feel like the book presents him as not being as talented as he comes across, like as everybody else thinks he is.
Yeah, well, so, you know, it's funny, like, I wrote that obituary for him. This is, again, we're going to have a section of every episode where we just discuss obituary news, where we have to just now talk through all of the obituaries that we've recently written in the last week. Yeah, like, you know, my obituary was very just like, look, this guy, he did all this stuff, but the reason why he's Robert Towne is he wrote the script of Chinatown, and this is just a script that's shorthand for great script and all of the screenwriter things. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm reading a lot of other tributes, and a lot of people are like, yeah, this was pretty much a case of a person getting elevated to the pantheon status because a bunch of screenwriting books decided this is the screenplay that we're going to teach through. It's a very good screenplay. There's a lot of great stuff about Chinatown, but it's a work of art that's great somewhat because it's a little bit mysterious. Robert Evans's famous quote, you know, was like, I got the script for Chinatown in my hands, and I read the script, and I have to be honest, I didn't understand a word of it, but I knew it would be a great picture.
Is that what Robert Evans sounds like?
Kind of. I don't know. Maybe,
You don't know. You're just guessing.
No, I know what he fucking sounds like. I'm just saying you be the judge. I'm no Matthew Good on The Offer doing a pitch perfect impression, but
you almost slipped into a Woody Allen for a second.
You think this is like Woody Allen? I don't know.
Just for a second. Listeners, write us in. Tell us what you think of that
Write us in. I love when you tell them to write us in.
Nobody's ever written to us, aside from like our friends or siblings who
our post
send
office
us a
boxes.
message like, good episode, or nah, that one was kind of long. I think the book presents Robert Towne as having a really hard time finishing scripts.
Yeah, and I mean, he kind of goes psycho, right? Like in the last couple in the movies that he gets to direct, like Greystoke and shit like that. He does some like monstrous shit, right?
Oh, does he? I don't remember that.
I just slandered the dead. He's dead. Who cares? But he was 89 too.
Biskind said that he didn't want this book to come across like he was writing obituaries, and I understand that. It's like if you're trying to like talk about people, like it sucks when you have to try to like be really respectful.
I don't know. Like I feel like there's this combination in the book of this really salacious tone, this wanting to take these guys down a peg, but like I'm not hearing it from a person who seems to have enough respect for their work that it feels like he understands what peg these people should be on.
Yes, I agree with that.
Like,
I agree with that.
Why are you the arbiter of this?
Don't hold people up on pedestals, but also you have to like the movies.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. If you're talking to film lovers, it would be nice if you also liked what they like.
I mean, this man's a professional film critic. Obviously, I don't mean to impute his taste. He's been a film critic for 50 years at this point. He started a magazine. He started an American Film Magazine in 1982. He was a very political writer because he was a very radical. He was a filmmaker. Did you know he made like anti-war documentaries and like 60s documentaries and shit?
Yeah, I saw that on his website.
Like, he was a very political guy. He was and I do think that there's a certain amount of him resenting that like the 70s movies aren't that political in their way. They're more just about like coolness.
Yeah. I see that totally. I guess I wanted to say with Robert Towne, there's this like anecdote he tells that I think just really highlights how Biskind is just the ultimate armchair psychologist.
Yeah.
He's like very interested in exploring the personality flaws of these figures, and he presents his own interpretations of them as just fact. And like he tells this story where he describes Robert Towne as a polite narcissist who like doesn't complain about Warren Beatty outright, but he relishes talking to Beatty on the phone in front of other people so that other people can hear Towne act from a position of power when he does things such as like calling Beatty a cunt on the phone. And
they're one of the great friendships that the film shows the dissolution of, right?
The book, you mean?
Or no, it's him and Jack Nicholson.
Well, there's this quote from Jeremy Larner in the book that says, Towne got turned on by his conversations with Beatty and said, most men in Hollywood are more turned on by each other than they are by the women they fuck. So he definitely like paints this picture of these guys' relationships with each other as being a little, homoerotic.
Well, they talk about, Schrader talks about the whole his neo-gay phase.
Oh yeah, that part was so interesting.
This is all, right, and he's talked about this with Bret Easton Ellis many times on the podcast, but American Gigolo and all that stuff. Like Schrader, I think, is famous for having the quote about like, any good director has to be bisexual because you have to know how to take pleasure in the beauty of every person that you're depicting,
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating. And I love that. And he was just sort of trying to be politically gay at the moment, like to explore more aspects of himself. You gotta love Paul Schrader, man.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, the book was like he wanted to be gay,
right,
but wasn't.
Yeah, right, exactly. He would just like hang out with gay guys all the time and like try and do stuff. And
yeah, that's cool.
He's after my own heart, I have to say.
I guess in terms of Biskind himself being our critic, the other person I want to mention that he talks about is Pauline Kael.
Yes. He did a whole book on Warren Beatty,
Oh, yeah. Warren Beatty, he says that Beatty slept with 12,775 women. Wow. And I read this article that pointed out that Don Giovanni only had sex with 2,000 women.
Hey.
And when somebody asked Warren Beatty about this number, Beatty's like, do the math. That is just like not physically possible.
I actually was working quite a bit, even though I was famously not prolific.
Like, yeah, I fucked a lot of women, but
right.
12,700? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But Pauline Kael, Biskind describes her, as many other people do, as somebody who practiced favoritism and was easily wined and dined.
A bit of a starfucker.
and a bit of a starfucker, and says that she was very possessive over male directors.
Right.
And if other females were around, she would say things like, "Oh my God, you look like a pornographic Angela Lansbury," to other women, which is funny. But I also don't like that depiction of Pauline Kael, that she's just like in love with these like male directors that she's hyper fixated on and gets like jealous around them and stuff. That's annoying. Like, give Pauline Kael some respect, even if you can criticize things about her, you know, about the favoritism and whatnot. Like,
yeah, what if we have like a new like super dominant like male film critic who was just praising like a bunch of like women filmmakers that were just seducing him, and like we had this whole dawn of like women filmmakers with just this one central critic who's like, oh, she's the best.
I love that. That'd be great. You know, Sam,
right.
I think actually you're really good at writing our little social post texts and stuff, and I think you'd be a great film critic, and I think this should be you. You should just become a film critic, a famous one, and then pick and choose which female directors you want to fuck.
To pretend to like female directors.
And raise them up, you know?
Yeah. But I am non-binary, so it wouldn't be quite the same thing.
True. Okay, I have a hard time knowing how much to trust in this. And, like, we talked about this a little bit before, like,
Trust.
that it's not that we think he's, like, making anything up, but these stories, a lot of them are coming from people who were feeling jilted or angry or annoyed. Friedkin said, "I've never actually read the book, but I've talked to some of my friends who are portrayed in it, and we all share the opinion that it is partial truth, partial myth, and partial out-and-out lies by mostly rejected girlfriends and wives." Now, I couldn't really find any evidence of people who said that specific things were untrue. The only actual example I could find of that was Spielberg, who, like I said, told Roger Ebert that everything in the book about him was a lie. But otherwise, really the only thing I could find was people saying stuff was taken out of context.
Yeah.
So I've heard a lot of criticism about this book, that it has a lot of untrue stuff, but yeah, I couldn't find the primary sources for that.
It's just that it feels so like he's in the room, and like you can't possibly have known what the vibe in this situation was really like. Like, you know, it just reads like he is in that situation, and you know, I don't know if he's sort of combining these different accounts to get a sort of perfect 360-degree view of some moment, or if he's just getting a bunch of different versions and he hears one that's super juicy and he just can't resist that one. And why would you, I guess, if like your whole goal is to tell the things that are the secret truths that haven't been told, right? Like, do you have to sort of tell yourself, like, I assume the true version is the most fucked up one? Because that's like more like real life really is, or something, you know?
Do you think he was doing that? You think he was just... I mean, obviously he was
No,
choosing the most salacious stories because
it's
juicier, but...
Well, like, I've heard, you hear these stories get told a bunch of different ways in different books. I have heard them all told and retold, and the stuff that you hear in Easy Riders Raging Bulls is just so much more detailed and so much more...
But he got 400 hours worth of interviews.
I know, and these are kind of the primary sources probably for a lot of these people who, you know, maybe wouldn't even remember this story of theirs unless it was out there or something and people kept asking them about it, and then it got garbled or something, you know, like, I don't know. Yeah,
he had said, Biskind had said that his goal was to tell readers what it was like to live through that era. So given that he was a working film critic and also had made movies himself, maybe it was that he had all these impressions of these people, so he wasn't like making these impressions up. He wasn't the one creating these impressions of these people, and he just wanted to get those impressions out into a book, and got interviews with people to support the impressions that he had already had about these guys.
It's possible. I mean, I also think the thing about it to me that is like, so you say sometimes that I kind of talk in this way where I feel like I've been, like I'm I'm talking about a period of time or like what it was like in the 60s or 70s, and it's like I obviously can't possibly know what that's like. And you're right, I'm just going off of like things that people have said.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like with me, I feel like I'm usually attempting to paint some sort of like counterintuitive perspective or just like something different that it's like, you know, you might not have realized that in this period, this was how they looked at that and that was different. And his take is like, I don't know if you realized it at the time, but this thing that was happening was incredibly fucked up.
Yeah, but I think he felt like, you know, what I had said before about writing for magazines, and he felt like he had to be so reverent.
Yeah, right.
I think
exactly.
At the time he felt like what everybody was writing about these guys are so great.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to write something different.
But I'm saying, like, I don't know if he sounds when you read it like he's not giving me an impression of how it probably felt at the time. He's giving me an impression of how it looks in retrospect, even though he's putting it himself in the moment.
I disagree. To me, it kind of seemed like that's how it would have felt at the time if you were not an average moviegoer, but if you were in the film studio system and you knew these people and you went to these parties.
I guess real life is kind of always more toxic than what you can image,, right?
Especially people have a lot of money and are given a lot of power and treated like gods, which that's how Biskind painted it. So I don't mean to. I feel like I'm being a little circular here. He's
kind of two minds about it because he's getting the perspective. He would say he's also reporting just the perspective that these people have, which is kind of wistful for these times. It's their golden age. It's back when the studios trusted them to do their work in a way that they don't feel like they have in the modern movie landscape. But so it's like I feel like he's hearing them talk about it in this halcyon, like, man, we didn't know how good we had it. It was such a magical time. Everything was possible. And he's hearing it and he's going like, uh-huh. But what you don't realize is that your fucked up personality was playing out writ large on this thing. And you know, everybody hated you, man. Like, you didn't even get that. You know, like, I think that he is seeing these people be delusional a little bit in his mind, you know?
Yeah. Do you think it is wrong to dig up stuff about personal lives the way he does? Like, what affairs people had? Like, do you think it's wrong to focus on that when you're discussing artists? Like, should we be more respectful of people's private lives?
I mean, I just think that it is... That is one of the most striking things about reading this book to me, as far as its time capsule of when it was written. Like, the stuff that he's writing about, like, if he were writing this, if somebody were attempting to write this book now, it would be way darker. I don't think it would have any of the tone of fun that the book does have.
Yeah.
Like, it would be really like, these people were all monsters.
Right.
I'm saying if the book was attempting to tell these fucked up tales, or whatever, it would not be, and there would be no level of like.
It'd be way more moralizing. You say it's already moralizing.
No, you're right. It would be way more moralizing, I think. But I think that the fact that he does seem to be he seems to be so much more scandalized by like people sleeping with a woman who's not their wife versus like it being a director sleeping with an intern. Or something, you know, like he is much more bothered by the fact that it's like he's lying to his wife, man, that poor wife, like as opposed to like is this a fucked up power dynamic that's going, you know, like he's not interested in examining those things at all.
Yeah, but we're also coming from the perspective of like that being more of a thing that we're talking about currently in society.
I guess
and care more about.
I guess you're right. Now it's like I hope people wouldn't care as much in the same way about just people having affairs and stuff, you know, like,
right.
But I think people still do. I think a lot of people want to lump that stuff in with Me Too things a lot of times.
Yeah, I do think there's a difference between being an asshole versus taking advantage of people in a sexual power dynamic way.
There's things that cross, you know, both thresholds and stuff, but this book is primarily concerned with like how it's hurting their poor wives.
Yeah. I mean, in our podcasts, we certainly tell all sorts of juicy stories when we can find them about people's personal lives. So we are totally guilty of this kind of thing. We also raise the art up. We're not bothered by the same types of things that Biskind is, but we're totally hypocritical here.
You're right. You know what? You're absolutely right. And I'm being weirdly moralizing about this book in a way right now. Like, and it's not like this it's like I'm claiming like, oh, he doesn't give any attention to whatever Polanski, the rape charge and stuff. This podcast has not. We are not trying to be a podcast where we discuss all of the horrible misbehaviors of people. I mean, of course we will touch on it, but it's not that we're not overly focused on that.
We are going to talk about Polanski movies. We're going to talk about Woody Allen movies, and we will acknowledge awful shit surrounding all of that. I guess
to some degree, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we'll get into this, but it's like it's clear that this is a new Hollywood podcast. Okay, yeah. So and
we do want to talk about the movies too.
This is what we care about. Is like we're trying, and I know that I'm not interested in getting bogged down in like trying to litigate the morality of a lot of these artists a lot of time. So I do think it's definitely hypocritical for me to be like, what's up with Peter Biskind not, going hard enough against these future Me Too people,
Biskind said that it's impossible to understand why these guys crashed and burned in the 80s without understanding their personal lives. And he wrote about their personal lives because this was an era of personal filmmaking within the studio system. So that was his own rationale for it. I see that. I totally see that. Sure. I also think it was also like he liked the juicy gossip.
Sells books,
It sells books, yeah. Not that he was just into money. Like when Harvey Weinstein heard that Biskind was writing about him, and this was after Easy Riders Raging Bulls was such a big hit, Weinstein had said that he would pay him to write about anything else. Like, he would fund his next book if he wrote about anything else. And Biskind was like, nah, I'm going to write about you. So, you know.
But at the same time, I just have to say that book, I think, has got to come under extreme scrutiny because he's given that whole scene the Biskind eye of disapproval looking for all the scandals, and I mean, there is nothing about Harvey Weinstein's monstrous things. It truly
really?
No, I mean, I
haven't read it.
People did not talk about this back then. There was not, but no, I mean, he's not. There's nothing in that. It's
wow.
It's from like 2003.
Yeah, but I just
2005 or whatever.
I thought it was all about Weinstein.
There was all sorts of an asshole Harvey Weinstein ruining the independent film scene story to tell, and there's definitely like a few things in there that's like. He was handsy with some girl or something. I don't know, but it was like.
Do you think he didn't hear those stories?
It reads crazy. No, that's what I'm saying. I
think he would have told those stories.
I think so. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the whole point. Is like it. I think that book now at this point has to be judged as an utter failure, just as far as a salacious book goes.
Because he just didn't find the juicy
stuff. It's got literally nothing in the book that is the crazy. But of course, you couldn't really treat that in the same way that he's trying to treat other misbehaviors. That's so much more monstrous. Like, so
but that's
what would
kind
it
of
even be? Like,
That's kind of the thing with Easy Riders. Like, the really monstrous stuff, he doesn't spend that much time on. Like you said, like the Polanski stuff and Peter Bogdanovich's girlfriend getting murdered. Yeah. Like, that stuff wasn't really given a lot of time in the book. And I think it's because it was just so monstrous that he didn't view it on the same scale.
Right. There's a lot of stuff you can talk about and not leave in all of those horrible things, I guess. But it sticks out in this day. It's affected the way that the book reads now, of course.
Yeah. So my concern with having read this now is, how do I make sure I'm not too biased by things that Biskind wrote when I am considering New Hollywood in general? Because I do think this book is a very useful book for giving people more familiarity with all the figures involved in New Hollywood. And it's also just fun celebrity gossip. So, it's enjoyable if you like reading trash, which who doesn't?
Yeah, it honestly, like, when you're reading it, or like it delivers. Like, almost every page or every minute that you're listening to the audiobook, it's like, wow, I can't believe what I just heard or read.
Yeah, we were briefly watching some of the Easy Riders Raging Bulls documentary.
Yeah, not as salacious.
No, none of the salacious
You're
stuff
totally
was in
right,
there,
yeah.
and it was just a boring documentary. Like, it had interesting quotes and interesting clips, but it was totally boring.
Seemingly, probably, just trying to tell the story in a more architecturally sound way.
Yeah, without any of the gossip.
Yeah. Maybe I'll watch
sex. And it wasn't as fun.
No, you're right.
But yeah, so I do think that there is... this book is useful and worth your time reading if you're interested in this era, but I'm just worried I'm going to be too influenced by it in my opinions of all these people moving forward. There were so many times where I wanted to write down a funny anecdote to put in my notes for future episodes that we're going to do. But then I was like, should I even like include this? And I ended up writing them down in my notes, but always saying, according to Biskind, or, according to interviews from Easing Riders, Raging Bulls. So it always comes with the caveat of this, all of these stories were told with like trying to maximize the salaciousness. But yeah, I'm just a little worried we'll be a little too influenced by it. Like the people who are in our theme song at the end, I know a couple of them probably are in there because of this book. And then we do that whole "we blew it" thing and, at the end of our episodes. And I feel like we do that because Easy Riders Raging Bulls focuses on "we blew it" from Easy Riders as a whole chapter heading for the end of New Hollywood.
Yeah, but it's just like, it's so irresistible. It was irresistible at the time, talking about the end of the 60s, right as it began. And it's an irresistible bookend.
Which, sorry, I don't think I explained it well enough. In Easy Riders, the movie, there is a famous line where Peter Fonda says, "We blew it," when they botch one of their tasks that they're supposed to do involving delivering drugs or whatever it was. Yeah. And Peter Biskind highlights it as being representative of what happened to the New Hollywood directors and filmmakers and screenwriters and all of them, is they blew it.
Yeah. I'm kind of not worried, I guess because I'm a contrarian. I'm kind of not worried about this book affecting my view of them too much, because I actually think I'm inclined to kind of disbelieve this book a little bit. Or I'm inclined to sort of take a little bit more of a, well, I know how people can get carried away sort of like take of thing. Like maybe it is this, I'm on the side of artists fundamentally in a way versus people being uncomfortable.
I'm worried I'm going to forget what came from this book.
We got to get another book under our belt is the thing. We don't have to do a book report immediately, but we got to get another flavor. Perhaps with some better writing, I think. No offense, Peter. But, I mean, I'm just saying, like, Mark Harris, like, he writes so beautifully and just really puts all this stuff together in a way that, like, I feel like I know Mike Nichols in a way, and this is an enigmatic figure. I mean, it's not a knowable man in a lot of ways. From reading Mark Harris's portrayal of him, and it's not, maybe it's a little bit more positive on the whole than Biskind, but it's just like, I feel like Biskind is in a way obscuring these characters some way by painting them only in this negative light. And so my brain naturally just counters that to a certain degree. So I'm a little bit not worried about it impacting my look on it.
I think you're totally right that if we read more books, we don't have to worry so much about a single book playing a larger role than it should in the way we think about it. And I guess this concern is more for me. You said you're not worried about it happening on your end. I'm worried about it happening on my end. But I think you're totally right. I'll just read more books. Homework.
It's okay, though.
I do love reading books. I read nonfiction books when I'm walking to and from my car to lab, because I've got like a 30 or 40-minute walk each way. And there's this mailman who often drives by, and his name's Manny the mailman. And anytime he sees me reading, he stops and pulls over and he's like, "Hey, how's it going? What are you reading right now?" And it's really cute. And we have like this whole back and forth. Like, he's got this niece who's really into reading, and like last time he stopped, he pulled out a book and he's like, "Look, I'm reading too." And it was really cute. But then he was like, "You should read it too." And it was a self-help book, and I was like, "Oh, I don't want to read that." So now I'm a little worried he's going to ask me next time if I read the self-help book. But anyways,
you're not going to say its name?
I wrote it down. I forget what it was.
Okay.
But I do enjoy having a chance to... I do like reading, okay? I like being the chick who reads while walking on the sidewalk. So I guess it won't be too hard to read more nonfiction, even though I'm more into like smutty fantasy romance books. But I'll do it for the podcast.
So you feel like this is mainly just giving you stuff to chew on about the people, but you kind of you don't feel like it's given you that solid understanding of the timeline.
No, I don't think it's because it jumps around a lot. I don't think it gave me as clear an idea of the timeline, but it did have some insights that I think were pretty good. Like, it points out that the late 60s and the 70s were the first times that academics started taking film seriously, and it became cool to be a film nerd. And it also points out that I mean, this is probably obvious to a lot of y'all, but I didn't really take it on board that Hollywood's slow to react. So filmmaking in the 70s is still reacting to the 60s. Yes. Because earlier in my new Hollywood journey, I was always thinking about how the movies in New Hollywood seemed more to match 60s mentality, and that was kind of confusing to me. But now it makes sense because it takes a while to make movies.
Yeah, that's true. Music is much quicker.
So I do think that it did have some good insight. Yeah, I do think it was helpful for establishing a bit of a timeline. But I think what'll be most helpful for me is just continuing and working our way through the movies.
Yeah, I'm excited for another perspective. Like this is also not only has this a very salacious perspective, it's also just this very telescoped out view of specifically the movie brats.
Yeah,
right? Like this is the tale of the movie brats.
There's so many people missing. Right. Do they even mention Kubrick at all?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm sure that they mention him. I'm sure once or twice, but no. Yeah, I mean, there's so many threads missing. I'm sure that there's a way that we could finally crack your understanding of the life of the producers through somebody's book sometime.
I think that if I focused on just one producer...
Yeah. Well, we're going to do Alan Ladd. I promise you, dude.
Yep.
The Ladd stays in the picture.
Yeah. You're right. We will.
Is that it? You got anything else?
Cold Stone? Should we give our Cold Stone rating?
The book?
For the book?
For the book. Can the Cold Stone rating be applied to book? They're so different. It's like... I mean, Yes,
you could say whether or not you like, love, or gotta have a book.
Okay, so just to sort of explain this, although I'm frazzled at attempting to apply this to a book, but my first job was at Cold Stone Creamery, which is an ice cream store that I was going to say an ice cream department, and where you they have sizes that are not small, medium, nor large. They are like it, love it, and gotta have it. And I never forgot this scale. And I decided one day perhaps we could apply it to movies that we like. And I guess now books too, we at least like. And so if we like it, at least we say we like it, we love it, or we gotta have it. If we don't like it, we say it doesn't make the scale, right? I guess that's it. What did you think?
Like it.
Yeah, I like it. I liked this book less than most books on the subject that I've read. It's not one of my favorite. I can always read it, but like reading Oscar Wars or any of the Mark Harris books and stuff, I think it's a case of got there first a little bit.
Yeah, I think I like it just because it's a juicy read, and I like reading about smut, so yeah. That's why I like it, and I don't love it.
No.
But I do also think it has some value. I don't think it's just trash. I think there is value to be had from it. I think there's a lot of flaws in it. I think it's very mean-spirited a lot of the time, but I don't think it's completely inaccurate. So yeah, that's why to me it's just it is just a like it.
One of the best parts is the title.
Yeah, it's a very good title.
It's a good title.
Yeah. That concludes another exciting new Hollywood adventure. Thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Kale Your Idols on the podcatcher of your choice. We really appreciate ratings and reviews. They are instrumental to the growth of small podcasts like ours. And we would love to hear from you. So please get in touch with us on Instagram, X, or you can send an email to kaleyouridols@gmail.com. I run the social media accounts, so if you get into an argument with us on there, you will be arguing with me. We want to say thank you to the Illuminator for our logo, and thank you to ourselves for everything else. Next episode will be a fun one. We are covering Ridley Scott's sci-fi classic, Alien.
Hey, Peter Fonda. How do we do?
We blew it. What? What?
Marlon Brando, Ellen Burstyn, Robert Evans, and Shelley Duvall. Sad endings 'cause of Watergate and Vietnam. Never thought I'd be so happy to see the old studio systems fall. liquor.